Hello and welcome to the Rabyd Atheist. I'm Rabyd, a former pastor turned atheist, now a compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Feel free to like or dislike the video as you see fit, so feel free to hit those buttons. Feel free to comment below, and I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel and hit your notification bell for more content as it is released. You're also free to share my videos as much as you like, because the purpose of this channel is educational in regards to atheist and deconversion issues and any issues related to those issues. A hearty shout out to the Rabyd Nation. Join the nation by hitting that subscribe button. And if you want to become a paying citizen of the nation and support the channel in a more tangible way, hit that join button and your options will be presented. Today I want to continue on in my deconversion story, moving into part 15, where I am talking about church number 3, but this is kind of the end. Today I kind of want to talk about an affair, a fall, and a relief. It's kind of the end of my ministry in that particular church, and it wasn't very glamorous or glorious. I want to give a caveat. This part is a very hard part for me to talk about. It's very personally embarrassing, but I feel it's very necessary to talk about this stuff because I think there's other people out there, particularly ministers, that are struggling with some of the same things that I did. And I want to make sure that you understand that you're not the only one that's done this, and you're not the only one going through things. So make sure you get a grasp on that. And there's nothing particularly unique about my story other than I'm the one that had it. The other part that's difficult with this part of the story is I'm protecting a lot of people by being very vague. I can't go into a lot of details, particularly about the person, the young woman that I had an affair with, but I do want to mention her and what she did from my side of things. I'm not going to go into her motivations or things like that. I'm just going into it from telling the story from that point of view, and then the rest of you, I suppose, can speculate all you want. But at the time, we need to kind of recap. I've lost 2 good friends in the space of 6 months. I'm grieving over them, but I don't have anybody to tell because you're the pastor, so everybody expects you to be the strong one. You can't really tell anybody about it. My marriage is pretty strained. Communication's pretty low. I'm not really feeling like I can trust her with the knowledge that I'm an atheist or any of that kind of thing, or that I don't believe in Christianity anymore. We've been a pastor-wife combo now for 20 years, so it was like, do I really want to let that out? I just didn't trust the situation or her at the time, and probably still don't now that we're divorced, but at the time I was very much not going to say anything. I'd been an atheist in the pulpit for 1.5 to 2 years during this time when things are starting to get really stressful. And so roughly in about October of 2017, I want to say, 2017, a young lady walked into the church for the first time. She was much younger than me. She was living with some family members because she had to get out of the bad situation that she was with her parents and her brother. She was very young. But I looked at it, first young person I've seen in my church that's coming consistently, regularly, literally in years. So I'm dealing with people that are, 50 and older for the most part in my church. I was actually one of the youngest people there at the time. And so it was kind of a breath of fresh air from a ministry standpoint. And she was going through a lot of things, so I spent a lot of time talking to her and counseling with her and just trying to give her some good advice on how to handle the situation. I was pretty much just, focused in on that. My stress level was pretty high myself, and this young lady kind of picked up on that. She began to ask me how I was doing after the death of my first friend, and then when the organist died, she also asked how I was doing. Like, nobody, you got to understand, I think this is one of the foibles of the ministry and the attitude towards ministers. I get it. I'm an atheist, and I think ministers, they're either voluntary con men or involuntary con men. I get it. I get the ire against the clergy. I really do. At the same time, a lot of ministers feel trapped in it, and they're not, and I was feeling very trapped. And so, ministers tend to be looked at as the strong person that has to be the center of strength, even though they're going through a lot of stuff themselves. And I think that's the thing that drew me to this person initially, was the fact that she actually asked how I was doing and actually meant it. She could see that I was hurting or connect with it, and it was weird because I was going through this stuff at home too, but nobody ever said, "Hey, how you doing?" And I don't know. I guess I kind of come off being probably autistic. That I come off kind of cold blooded, and I don't. I have to tell my family and friends. I do have feelings. I'm just not very good at expressing them at times, and so this was particularly one of those cases, and then reinforced by the ministry of 20 years. And you got to be the strong person in the room. You got to be the calm one, even though you're inside, you're just churning. I think the ministry probably reinforced my autistic masking to the point that I'm pretty much a champion at it. I am the world champion at autistic masking, I swear. And it's a real problem, and I'm working on it, but it's still a struggle. And so at this time, it certainly was, I didn't have any knowledge of this. I didn't know really what was going on with myself or any kind of self-discovery in that realm. I just felt I was grieving hard. My marriage wasn't great, so I was upset about that. I felt like everything was one-sided. I was been an atheist in the pulpit for a year and a half, working on 2 years. And this is the first person that's bothered to ask me how I'm feeling and mean it. So when the organist died in February, she was right there. She said, "Hey, how are you doing? Everybody else in the church is grieving over his loss, but how are you doing?" And I needed to tell somebody. And I told her, I said, "I'm grieving hard. This guy was a friend. I told her, I said, he confided into me. He doesn't really believe in Christianity. He just liked to play the organ." I didn't confide into her what I believed at that time, never did, but it was more of I just sounded off. We were standing in the foyer of the church, there were other people around, so it was a safe thing. I just kind of leaned over and talked to her about it, and it kind of formed that initial bond between the two of us. And so I just kind of moved on from that. The first time I felt something positive, and as well as this young lady was starting to get some of the things I was saying, I was keeping away from, Bible-based God counseling and trying to give her more practical advice on how to handle her family and her own situation. And so things got interesting at that point. March came along, my birthday came along, and this particular year, for some reason, everybody was going to be busy. There was going to be no. Usually the family takes each other out, to eat, but this year it was like, oh, we don't have any time to do that. We aren't going to be able to do that, and it just ended up being, okay, sorry, Dad, but sorry, honey, sorry, Dad. You're going to have to just be out of luck this year. And I'm like, being the world champion of masking, I said, well, okay, but inside I really felt like, damn, if anybody else's stuff got forgotten, they'd be upset about it, and we'd hear about it, I guess, a little bit, or maybe not. But I felt kind of bad about it for some reason, because I think it was everything else that was going on was just pushing me down. And so on my birthday, it was a weekday, I believe, at some point, and I just, all of a sudden I get this call from this young lady, and she talks to me for an hour and wishes me a happy birthday, and says, "You shouldn't be alone on your birthday, and I'm sorry everybody forgot or, didn't care enough to do anything." And she did some things for me, and it was a nice gesture. And it's about this time that I was writing my other blog that no longer exists, and I was writing a story, just taking my childhood and my growing up days and mixing it with like urban fantasy magic, and she had taken an interest in it. And about this time I added her into the story as a character, and she loved it. Okay, and I write new episodes every day or so, every couple of days, and she would give me feedback, and we were both writers. It was about this time that she kind of gave me some advice, because I'd always struggled with writing poetry, and she gave me some advice on writing poetry. And, we began to bond as friends. And it was a really good friendship as long as it stayed a friendship. But unfortunately, it didn't stay there, and that's kind of the sad part for me, because I think I was so overloaded, my nervous system was so overloaded with all the grief and the struggle and the worry, and my marriage is shit and everything's bad. She picked up that me and Jody my ex-wife weren't getting along too well, and she asked questions about it, and I didn't think anything of it, because it's like, okay, she's just curious, whatever. She's pretty good with, talking to me about stuff. And I don't know, it was about May, late May, and she, I had written some things in the blog, the story where her character and mine as a young person get a little bit intimate. And she, after a certain point, she just says, are you feeling things for me? Because I'm feeling things for you. And I'm like, what, is more than a friendship? He says, yeah, to me it's more than a friendship. I'm developing other things. And if I had been smart, if my nervous system hadn't been overloaded, and I really am embarrassed by this, but I like, yeah, to be honest, I have more feelings for you than my wife at the moment. So I said, yeah, unfortunately, I do have some feelings for you that are more than friendship. And, I wish I could get rid of them, but they're just there. And what would follow was a very short-lived, very emotional, very cyber type affair, where we would text back and forth, send messages back and forth, talk on the phone, because she ended up moving back with her family about the same time. So we were like easily 40 miles apart, so there was just no opportunity. But within a week, she told her family about it, and on May 27th, 2018, she told the affair to her family. Her family jumped down my throat. I had to tell my wife. Things got very, very ugly that day. And, my wife, of course, left the house, lived with her mother for a bit. And, my kids were there. They were upset about things. It was just a bad situation all the way around. And I wrote a resignation letter. This is where, that's the affair of the fall, is where I left the church. And I left the church this way. I decided I was so overwhelmed with emotion and grief, and now I had this big emotional mess to deal with. And I think at this point, I was either in the throes of a nervous breakdown or damn close to one. And the only thing that was keeping me going was this young lady and the relationship I now had with her. And it was kind of a torrid relationship, very up and down after that. But I wrote a letter to resign the next Sunday on June 3rd. And I went out Monday. I went to the church, went in, got my stuff, walked around a little bit, stood behind the pulpit one last time. And I was reflecting at that time on the irony, because the Sunday before, that morning, I was preaching on a series through the Ten Commandments, and lo and behold, thou shalt not commit adultery. And I'm laughing to myself that I don't believe this stuff, but here it is kind of mocking me. And I'm feeling like an idiot. I'm feeling, like I don't know what to do here. So I wrote the letter to resign. I handed it to the moderator of the church and told him to read it on the next Sunday morning. And he said, well, you should do that. I said, I don't think I have the emotional wherewithal to do this myself. He wanted me to, but I'm like, no, I can't do it. So just read the letter, and I'll come in a day or a Sunday or two later and explain everything. And in the letter, I had put that I had had an inappropriate relationship, and that was part of my reason for resignation. 2 days later, the guy calls me up and says, "Hey, I think you need to remove this thing. We're trying to, the family knows and everybody knows, but we're trying to keep it away from the church people as much as possible. We're trying to keep it on the down low." And I'm saying, well, okay, whatever. So I rewrite the letter, take that out, that I was having an inappropriate relationship, and give it back to him, gave him a new copy. That's the last time I ever talked to him. Last time I ever saw him, last time I was ever in his presence, and don't want to go back again. Because what happened is the next Sunday, the guy gets in the pulpit, reads my letter, says, well, and this is paraphrasing based on reports. He said, well, what Pastor Ed's not telling you is, and then he gave the affair. He had to tell the story about the affair. And it really made it look like I was hiding something, but I had originally put that in there. And then all of a sudden I was hiding something. They waited a week. They had a vote and basically voted me out. I tried to contact the guy about what he had done. He wouldn't write me back. He wouldn't text me back. So I'm like, oh, flip, this guy's backstabbed me. And it was too bad because I trusted him. He had been a friend for a while. We had had our disagreements, but I never thought he would do that. But then I realized, he's kind of a sociopath and he needs to be in control. And, he has to look like the good guy. He has this thing about people patting him on the back for being the good guy, and this was a perfect opportunity for him to do it. The affair, during this time when they're debating stuff, and I wrote another letter to the church board, to the council, and basically told them, I said, you guys, don't give me severance, don't give me any of this stuff, and you basically voted me out of the church unanimously, and you didn't even bother to tell me what day you were going to do it so I could show up. And, and I blasted him. I think I put it in the minutes. I said, I want this filed with the minutes of the meeting, because I lit into the moderator about how he was a liar and a backstabber and everything else. And I said, you know what, you can kiss our friendship goodbye, because it's gone. There's nothing left there. The affair lasted until August 2nd in 2018, where she left and said she was done, and that she had basically said that I was just playing games and I was just fooling around, and it's like, fooling around, huh? So this is where I have a hard time with the story, because everybody wants to make me into the perpetrator and her into the victim, and it's like, I know she was really young, but I think she knew what she was doing. This is one area where me and Red Pill kind of get along, because I think women, particularly young ones, like to shield themselves, like they don't know what they're doing, and they're the victim. And it's like, no, I don't think so. I think there's a lot of problems there. People can be very manipulative even at a young age. So depending on how you're raised, I guess. But I haven't talked to her since. Okay, haven't really checked on her a couple times just to make sure she was alive. I'm one of those weird people that still cares about people that they've loved, and I guess I check on them to make sure they're okay. But after that, the church and me parted company, and up until August 2nd, it was kind of I was on my own. I was trying to figure out what to do. I found a job, once again, working at the world's largest brick and mortar. And it was a good job. I was making more money from that job than I made in the ministry. So that was kind of an interesting point to me. But one thing that happened was a sense of relief that came over me. And because I didn't have to hide any of this stuff anymore. The grief part from my friends was still there. My marriage now, everything was out in the open that it was crap and we needed to either do something or whatever. And lastly, I didn't have to hide that I didn't believe in Christianity anymore. And I basically said I don't believe in Christianity anymore. Didn't tell anybody I was an atheist at that time, but I flat out told people, I said, I think the whole Bible thing is junk. And I think Christianity is junk. And I told some friends that too. So I don't really believe in any of that stuff. Okay. But there was a sense of relief at that point where I finally could be myself. At least I felt I could. And my emotions, there was a relief on my nervous system. It was summer, so my hypersensitivity was probably still kicking in, but it was a sense of, whew, it's over. I don't have to hide anything anymore. Um, After this, I can make this observation at this point. I'm going to cut this off at this point. I guess I will have one more part because I do want to put an epilogue to the deconversion story, um, and get that out there. But this is kind of where my deconversion really ended. I had deconverted from Christianity and believing in God 2 years previously, but nobody knew that. And a whole bunch of things just held on in my life, and I don't like talking about them. This is very uncomfortable for me, trust me. Okay. I'm trying not to reveal too much. I'm just kind of, it always brings up this sadness and this anger, and it's the one part of my deconversion story that I still have a large trouble talking about. And the rest of it is getting easier and easier, but this one still rubs me raw a little bit. But I now look back at it and I said, Ed, if you had contacted the Clergy Project when you first realized you were an atheist, you could have got counsel, you could have had a community, you might have avoided the affair. You might have avoided, you know, all the garbage that went along with leaving the church. I was really mad about that because I had gotten nothing but compliments on how I pastored the church up until that moment. Okay, there were very few negative comments. People just loved it. The organist that had died himself said you had completely changed the atmosphere of the church. It's much, much, much more positive. I'd done a lot of good there, and I made one mistake, and there's Christian Grace for you. Okay, they talk about it, but they don't mean it. Most of them don't. So it's kind of, I did the honorable thing trying to resign, but I was tricked into not confessing everything, and then ate the blunt of being trusting. So that kind of pissed me off. I'll take my half of it, but I ain't going to take all of it. And that includes the affair and the church. Everybody involved there knew what they were doing. And so I'm just not, I'll take my half of it. I screwed up. I really should have contacted the Clergy Project. And if you're a minister out there and you're going through some crap and you're in the pulpit and you're trying to figure out how to do this, contact the Clergy Project. It is the best move you'll ever make. I could have probably avoided the affair. I could have avoided the fall altogether. I probably could have got a sense of relief ahead of time before leaving the church. And I only had one more year of school to go. And so if I could have stayed one more year, it would have been hard on me, but I think it would have allowed me to complete things without being upset about it. I ended up graduating in December that year, but I had another semester to finish up my internship and a few other things, so it kind of worked out all right, but there's just a whole bunch of things that I could have avoided if I had just gotten the counseling and the career counseling and all the stuff in advance. It really was a difficult time for me, and Lone Rangering it is not the best option. Okay, you can't do this by yourself. I know being in the ministry kind of puts you in that position where you're always the loneliest guy in the room because of the situation, but I would say stop that, reach out to the Clergy Project, get involved in the community, get your counseling, get your career counseling, get what you need to get out of it, and the sooner the better. That was my biggest mistake, not getting help. And had I got help, I think I could have avoided the affair, I could have avoided the fall. It would have been much more of me resigning the church, being blessed out the door, and that would have been better for everybody. As it was a big mess, and I created a good chunk of that mess. I'd say other people had their hand in that too, but it would have avoided the whole mess in the first place. And I think, I probably could have gone at a different angle at my marriage that way, and maybe fix something. I don't know. I think once I'll talk about that sometime of why I think my marriage failed, but I think at this point I just want to kind of end this story and say, hey, if you're in the pulpit, you have a problem, contact the Clergy Project. They can help you. They really, really can. Well, thanks once again for stopping by. I'm still a little bit agitated about this one, but thank you for coming and listening to my story. Hopefully it helps you overcome some of the things that you've overcome. Remember that being an atheist in such a situation is very stressful. So, either show compassion to those you know are going through it, or if you're going through it yourself, give yourself a break. Go get some help. Okay, go get some help. Thanks once again for stopping by. And remember always to live your best life. You only get one go around and then it's over. There is no afterlife, none of that stuff. So don't waste your opportunities, your time, and your money on the trappings of faith and religion. Instead, give them to your family, to yourself, and to your friends, and to the world around you. Make sure you put your resources in things that are real and do some real things. Thanks once again for stopping by, and I'll catch you next time.